NATO has dropped the masks. The aggressive nature of the bloc is no longer hidden behind the formulations of an exclusively defensive orientation coalition activities. In Ukraine, Russian military personnel are confronted by the combined forces of the West, who control the leadership of this country in a hybrid war against Russia. Deliveries of weapons and military equipment to Ukraine are being increased, and personnel of the Ukrainian army are being trained. Huge financial resources are being transferred to maintain the viability of the nationalist regime. The actions of the armed forces of Ukraine are planned and coordinated by foreign military advisors. Intelligence comes from all available sources of information within NATO. The use of weapons is carried out under the control of Western experts. NATO's efforts are aimed at prolonging the agony of the Kiev regime. At the same time, we know for certain that no one in NATO has any doubts that the goals of the special military operation set by the Russian leadership will be achieved, and plans to achieve a strategic and economic weakening of Russia are failing. The dollar did not reach the ceiling of 200 rubles. As the US president predicted, the Russian economy survived. The special military operation dispelled the myth about the superweapon that the West supplies to Ukraine and which is capable of radically changing the situation at the front. The unconditional dominance of the United States and its allies is a thing of the past. On February 24, 2022, the start of a special military operation in Ukraine marked the end of the unipolar world. Multipolarity has become a reality. The poles of this world are clearly marked. The main difference between them is that some respect the interests of sovereign states, take into account the cultural and historical characteristics of countries and peoples, while others neglect them. This topic was repeatedly discussed during the previous meetings of the Moscow Conference. In Europe, the security situation is worse than at the height of the Cold War. The military activity of the alliance has acquired the most aggressive, anti-Russian orientation. Significant forces have been transferred to the continent from the United States, and the number of coalition troops in Eastern and Central Europe has increased many times over. It is important to note that the deployment of additional formations of the joint armed forces of NATO on the eastern flank of the bloc started even before the start of a special military operation in Ukraine. Operations of the armed forces of Ukraine are planned in Washington and London. Not only are the coordinates of targets for strikes provided by Western intelligence agencies, but the input of these data into weapon systems is carried out under the full control of Western specialists. Kiev's role in the Western approach to warfare is reduced to the supply of manpower, which is seen as expendable. This explains the huge losses of personnel of the armed forces and formations of the territorial defense of Ukraine. So far, the real figures of the dead military personnel and the mobilized so-called territorial defense forces are being hidden by the Kiev leadership. However, over time, these data will become public.
Thanks for watching. If you like our info, subscribe to channel and watch the next video.